Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much, Brother Ahmed, for having me and for organizing this session. Sincerely, the first thing I asked Brother Ahmed when he talked to me about this session was, can I come on the Hajj with them to protect them while they were there? And it's not because you need the protection. Sincerely, it's because I'm so, so jealous. You've received such a special invitation and you are going with such an incredible company. And so may Allah give you ease. May Allah invite all of us and may Allah accept your all of your efforts and everything that is going into this planning, both the Brother Ahmed and the coordinators, as well as all of you, the Hujjaj. My name is Zahra Billoo. I'm the executive director at CARE San Francisco Bay Area. For those of you that may not be familiar with CARE, we are the nation's largest American Muslim civil rights organization. In California, we have 4 offices: San Diego, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Sacramento. And then we have over 30 offices across the country. As you can imagine, it has been a very busy time for our teams. Since October 2023, we have seen an unprecedented increase in complaints of Islamophobia. And since Donald Trump took office, we've also seen a lot of concern about what his presidency means for all of us. The work that we do includes what I just described: direct legal services. We also do policy and advocacy work because you can fix one person's problem, and that's just one person's problem. So we work to change the laws that impact our lives. We work on outreach, education, and training like this because it's so important that all of you know your rights and know how to protect yourselves. And then we also work to train and empower the next generation of young people so that we can have more and more lawyers, more and more elected officials, more and more media personalities, and so on, to ensure that we are building our community's future. Today, we're going to talk about a couple of things. We'll focus on your rights at the border as a US citizen, and then your rights at the border as a non-citizen. Most of what I say will be straightforward. I hope you won't hear anything very surprising or new. We did look at the questions that were submitted in advance, and we'll make sure to work those in through the content. And then if there are more questions, we can take them at the end, inshallah. So, standard disclaimer: nothing I am saying here is individual legal advice. I am not your lawyer. For those of you who have lawyers, you should consult with them. And for those of you who do not, I pray you will never need one. But if you have specific or personal questions, please follow up with CARE or again with your existing attorney. Now, before I jump into this, into the substance of what we're going to talk about today, I do want to tell you something. A lot of you are understandably concerned. Every day I hear from people who are concerned. I wake up to calls from people who say, I dropped so and so off at the airport. I haven't heard back from them. Or I'm thinking about traveling and now I want to cancel my trip. Or I'm thinking of coming to the US and I don't know what to do. And of course, everyone's favorite question these days is, should I get a burner phone? I'm going to walk through all of that. But the thing I want to tell you is that the overwhelming majority of people have not had any change in their circumstances or experience. For every person who I have personally served on standby for as they come through the border, their experience has been positive. I've had family members who came back from Umrah 2 weeks ago. They said that they had one of the best experiences possible at LAX. I had another set of friends who came back from Umrah just this weekend, and they said they had a good experience at San Francisco International Airport. And we are seeing those trends across the country. I can't tell you not to be scared. There is reason for that. But I can tell you that the overwhelming majority of people will be just fine. Knowledge is power, so you should be prepared. It's good to have the information and to know what you can do and what you need to do. And please know that, again, it's not as though the majority of travelers are now having issues. It's that a few people have been targeted very visibly in our country. And the hope of the Trump administration is to scare the rest of us out of religious practice, out of political engagement, because you don't have to target everyone. You target one or two people, you make it very visible, and then everybody gets scared and starts to change their plans and how they are and what they're doing. Please know that inshallah you will be safe. So let's jump right into it. The majority of you, not all of you, are US citizens, and we'll talk about those of you that are not as well. But for those of you who are, your rights at the border. You always have a right to enter the country. You cannot be prevented from entering the country. You can't be turned away. You can't be sent to Pakistan. You can't be sent to Sudan. If you are a US citizen, born or naturalized, you always have the right to enter the country. This is a constitutional right. And so no Border Patrol officer will be able to turn you back. You do not have a right to a hassle-free entry. So this is where, it's like, will I get questioned? You might. Most people do not. Entry is guaranteed. So they can ask you whatever they want, and we'll talk about what you should say and you shouldn't say, but you will always be able to re-enter the country. Now, you are required to provide a valid passport. So one of the things you have to do at the border is prove that you are a US citizen. Now we know, and specifically with regard to Saudi Arabia, that they won't even give you the visa if your passport isn't valid. And I don't know if they still have the blank pages requirement, but Saudi's visas requirements are so stringent that you couldn't have gotten there if you didn't have a valid passport. So you most certainly have a valid passport when you're coming back. Now, the types of officers you could encounter when you're entering the United States. All of these agencies work with or cooperate with the Department of Homeland Security. So we're looking at Customs and Border Protection. That's who most people will interact with. That's who asks you, where did you go? Did you go for business or personal? That's Customs and Border Protection. They're the ones who inspect your passport, your visa, your green card. They're the ones who would search your luggage if a luggage search was merited, and they're the ones who would search your electronics if that was the case. TSA is a different agency. That's who you interact with on departure. So they are who handles screenings before you board flights, screen bags. They're the ones who would tell somebody if they were not permitted to get on a flight. Then there is ICE. We have talked a lot about ICE across our country in the last several months, and rightfully so. They are the largest law enforcement agency in the nation under DHS. Mostly what they are doing is internal enforcement. So if somebody is getting picked up at their house by immigration, that's going to be ICE. Now, you may occasionally see them at airports, but it is not routine. And then there's a couple of other agencies that you may or may not have heard of. Well, you've likely heard of the FBI, but HSI you may or may not heard of. It's one of the arms of ICE. It's also under DHS. And then there is the FBI. Our community's concern about ICE in the last several months really follows over 20 years of concern about the FBI. They are who investigates federal crimes, including quote unquote terrorism and national security issues. They are also the ones who investigate white collar crimes, and you'll see them cooperating with different agencies. It's always important to know who you're interacting with, and if you ever are stopped or questioned, assess that badge that they're wearing. If you're unclear who you're interacting with, ask which agency it is. Now, border searches. So what agents can and cannot do? They can search your luggage. We have long known that. Many people have made jokes about Border Patrol searching their dirty laundry when they're coming back from trips. There's no warrant required to search anything and everything that you are carrying on you, including your checked luggage. So simply, for example, when we get to electronics, we'll talk about, can I just put my phone in my checked bag? Your checked bag is still subject to search. They can and will ask questions that establish your identity and citizenship status. Now, those questions are going to focus on, in my case, for example, are you Zahra Billoo? Is this your passport? Where did you go? That's about all that is allowed. Now, what's difficult here is you will get asked other questions, and we can talk about that, but those are the only ones that you are required to answer. They'll take the position they can ask you anything. Our position is and remains that you only need to establish your identity. They can also take your electronic devices and perform a basic search. So a basic search is I'm going to go into the phone and look at what I can look at. Advanced searches like decrypting encrypted data or downloading information or going through deleted files, that's going to require reasonable suspicion, which is a higher standard and is generally not something that you're going to see happening at an airport. Now, I'll come back to electronics in a bit, but I want to tell you something here that you should remember, and maybe you can even start doing while you listen to me talk. The first is that you should never have face or fingerprint ID turned on your device. This is true if you're going to a protest where police might be. This is true if you're driving where police might pull you over, and if you are traveling internationally. You should not wait for a moment of crisis to turn off your face or fingerprint ID. You will not do it if you are nervous. Instead, you should do it now while I'm talking. The reason for this is because face and fingerprint ID do not require a warrant. Law enforcement is allowed to, as I noted, take your electronic device. In other words, they could take your phone, hold it up in front of your face, and unlock it if you have Face ID turned on. If you have face or fingerprint ID turned on, they're going to get into your phone if they want to. What we recommend is that you always have a complex password on your phone. Complex can be defined in a lot of ways, but complex is something that you're going to know and only you are going to know. You cannot be forced to enter your password on the phone. And that's why we've been telling people for years, your phones should only be on password lock because no law enforcement agent can force you to do that. To get past a password, a judge is going to have to get involved. And at that point, we've got bigger problems. And trust me, it's not something that happens even infrequently. Now, what can't they do at the border? They cannot detain you indefinitely. They can hold you for a certain amount of time while they question you or while they check your name records. Remember, I said at the beginning, you don't have a right to hassle-free travel. You have a right to enter the country. They're not supposed to target you based on religion or race. I have heard from many people who get pulled into secondary screening that when they look around, everyone around them is a Muslim or a person of color, which is why we encourage people to report when this happens so that we can document it. But they are not supposed to do that. So it's not supposed to be the case that like you are Muslim, so we have more questions for you. And they're not supposed to infringe on your First Amendment rights. So what you say about Palestine, what you say about Donald Trump, or even what you say about Joe Biden, none of that can be an issue for you at the border if you are a US citizen. Here's where this gets interesting. They can ask you whatever they want. What you control is what you answer. And this is really where your rights come into play. You have to answer questions about your identity and your citizenship. Am I a US citizen? Yes. Is this my passport? Yes. Which address am I returning to in the United States? I should give it to them. Now, am I Sunni or Shia? Are my parents from Pakistan? What I do for work or is my profession? Or who paid for my trip are all questions that maybe go to details about my personality and my lifestyle, but they are not questions about my identity. I don't need to answer those. So I can decline questions about religion, questions about politics, questions about social views. And if you're ever not sure if you're done, we teach people to say, am I free to go? Now, again, you can use this if you're at a protest and the police stop you. You can use it if you're on the street and ICE stops you. And you can use it if you are being questioned at the airport. If you are free to go, you should go. We tell people, get up, shut up, and walk away. If you are not free to go, remember that you have rights in this scenario also. Now, one key thing that we will repeat every time we talk to people about interactions with law enforcement, lying to federal agents is a criminal offense. Who paid for the trip? Mom versus dad, dad versus wife. It doesn't matter. It's not relevant to your entry. you should decline to answer the question. If you answer it wrong, you're going to cause more trouble for yourself. One of my colleagues will say often, you can talk yourself into trouble. You can never talk yourself out of it. And that's why silence is golden. Now, what to expect if you are pulled aside for secondary screening at an airport? Some of this may have happened to some of you before returning to the US. If it has never happened before, we don't anticipate beginning anew right now. That is not a trend that we are seeing. If it has happened to you or you're worried about it and you want to plan for it, keep in mind a few things. We know that the government maintains watch lists and does profile people from our community. So I told you they're not supposed to, and I'm also telling you that they in fact do. If you are on a list, you may have experienced extensive questioning, sometimes on departure, sometimes on arrival. Sometimes you may be taken to a separate room for questioning, and which, by the way, if that happens on departure, there was a really good question about hijab that came forward. If there's ever any physical screening that is going to happen, we've never, ever seen US officials ask US citizens to disrobe. In other words, we have not had clients where women are asked to take off their hijabs. That has happened in extreme cases at protests where people are arrested, but it has never happened in our work at airports. Yeah, it's been a very long time. I haven't seen that specific instance. If it does, right, or they say they want to search under it, or they just want to pat you down, you always have a right to a private screening room, and you always have a right to be pat down and or searched by an officer of the same gender. And if they don't default give you that, which again they very likely will, you should ask for it. And sometimes between the extensive questioning in the separate rooms, you're going to find that there is a wait time. So one of the things we tell Muslim travelers, right, even if you've never had any issues before, many people run on what we fondly refer to as Muslim Standard Time. That was me. I knew I needed to be on this webinar at 5 p.m. Pacific. I got back to my desk at maybe 4:57 Pacific, and I said, okay, I have to log on right now. That's not how we should be at the airport, right? At the airport, you want to actually allot the whole 2 hours or 3 hours that's recommended. Arrive with plenty of time. Better that you are there early and nothing happens than you are there late and you miss your flight because of the extended screening. Even things like asking for a separate room or asking for a pat down from the person of the same gender can cause extra screening and wait times. And so you just want to, can cause wait times. So you want to be mindful of that. You can and should always ask, why am I being inspected? A question I will ask if I go through the metal detector or the body scanner. And Brother Ahmed doesn't know this, but maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I went to Umrah with Dar es Salaam. And at the time, I was objecting to body scanners. They were brand new, and I felt so bad for the whole group because I made them wait while they then found an additional staff person to take me through the metal detector. So, whatever your choice machine is at this point, if it alarms or you are pulled aside for any additional inspection, ask why. One of the things that we encourage people to ask, one of the reasons we encourage people to ask that is because if it's only a specific part of your body that caused the alarm, then your whole body shouldn't be subject to the search. Now, on return, if you are asked to step aside or answer a few more questions, ask why. It's good to force these officers to provide rationale for their bad actions. If you're ever unhappy with your interaction with an officer, do the same thing you would do at a restaurant or at a school. Ask to speak to the supervisor. And if any of this happens to you, you can call CARE afterward and make sure that we work with you to file a trip request or a Freedom of Information Act request to follow up. Again, these are very, very rare scenarios, but knowledge is power. And so it's good that you have a sense of what is going on. Now, who does this happen to? People who visit Muslim majority countries often, right? So if that's all of the places that you're traveling to, sometimes you are considered higher risk. It also happens to people who are activists. So a lot of your favorite protest leaders, your favorite imams have these issues at the airports. And I wouldn't tell them to change anything about how they're doing or what they're doing because we continue to need them on the front lines and they inspire us with their courage. It's also their engagement with community groups that protects them because it's so much harder to go after someone who's so deeply entrenched in community. Now, people with dual citizenship will sometimes also raise flags. Some of you may be trying to apply for global entry these days. One of the things that's come up is, am I required to disclose my dual citizenship on global entry, on my global entry application? Our recommendation is that you do, because if it is found out in their background check of you and you didn't disclose it, you definitely will not get that global entry. And so people with dual passports are sometimes going to trigger additional scrutiny. And then the last item, of course, fortunately or unfortunately, is that if you're traveling with a lot of religious items, this may happen to you. I will tell you again, these are my cautionary words so that you have all of the information. I travel regularly with all of these things. I mean, literally twice a week I'm on a plane and I wear my hijab and I have my Quran and I have my prayer rug buried in my things, and it doesn't lead to me being stopped. Still, sometimes the government will pick these things out to target people. None of this is legal. To reiterate, none of this is legal. They will do it. We will fight it. Electronic devices. This is the question we are receiving the most in the last several months. So I already talked to you about this, but I'm going to reiterate it. You are first, turn off your Face ID, turn off your fingerprint ID. The only thing that you should have on your phone or your laptop to unlock it is a complex password. Our advice is that you never provide that password to law enforcement. As US citizens, you are not at all required to do that. The consequence here could be that your device is confiscated. We would much rather that happen than everyone in your phone have their information provided to the government. Because if I can get into your phone as a law enforcement agent, I'm going to download the contacts and I'm going to download Facebook and I'm going to download Signal and I'm going to find everything that's on your phone. So US citizens, we strongly recommend that you not provide that password. If your phone is confiscated, it's really important that you ask for a receipt. That will help us get it back for you. There are two kinds of searches. I'm sorry, let me go back to this. Non-citizens not complying here could undermine your ability to re-enter the United States. And so I can't tell you to give your password to law enforcement if you're a non-citizen, but I'm going to tell you to think very carefully about how to navigate that situation. And one thing that will protect you is that if you are going to need to provide your password to re-enter the country, that's a really good reason to travel with a phone that has little to no private or personal information on it. There are two kinds of searches that can be done on your phone. A basic search, border agents can run that without a warrant and without any kind of reasonable suspicion. The way they do this is if you give them your password. If they do this, they can access your photos, your texts, your emails, anything else that's on your phone. One other thing to do if you're not going to clear your phone or travel with a burner phone is to log out of all of your apps. Like if you're worried about how you're going to be under pressure, but you didn't get a burner phone, log out of all of your apps because a basic search isn't like you would have to give them the password multiple times for that to work. Another type of search is what's called an advanced search. In that case, they have to have reasonable suspicion that you have violated the law. None of you have violated the law, inshallah. But this higher level search would then allow agents to download information directly from your phone, including the actual metadata that's on the phone. To do this, they have to get supervisory approval. And if you have given them consent already, you're going to make it easier for that. And so US citizens, we strongly object to you providing this password. You shouldn't. Everything about your life is in your device and you're under no requirement to provide the password. Non-citizens, there are risks involved with not providing the password. And so you should consult with your immigration attorney to help you make a decision in advance. Now, in general, these situations, in the rare instances that they occur, can be heated. If you have made it all the way through Hajj without losing your temper at someone during tawaf, you can make it through this without losing your temper. Make sure that you never escalate your voice, tone, or attitude, that you're always polite and respectful. Your resistance should always be verbal. I do not consent to this search. Am I free to go? This question is not relevant. Can I speak with a supervisor? But you never physically resist. And the reason your objections matter is because later, if something does come out, something happens, we're going to be able to say, our client objected. Our client did not consent. I've touched on most of this, but here's the parts that we haven't covered yet on securing your device. A lot of people are moving to Signal or Proton Mail. We do recommend those apps. And still, one of our rules at our care office is if you don't ever want to see it on a billboard, it shouldn't be on your phone. In other words, there is no such thing as 100% foolproof or fail-proof security. Either another person will breach it because they made a mistake, or the tech will break, or something in between will happen. So even with the more secure apps, if you wouldn't want to see it on a billboard, it shouldn't be on your phone. Two-factor authentication is also a really important tool on all of your apps. Use them where you can, separate from any of this. Some of you may have seen people who have been subject to WhatsApp scams. Someone calls you, gets a code, all of a sudden you're moving a bunch of money, now they're messaging your friends. One way to prevent that, as well as law enforcement logging into your apps, is to set up two-factor authentication. And then sort of as an additional step here, when I say you wouldn't want to see it on a billboard, I mean, look, your protest planning, any planning for civil disobedience, any political views that you wouldn't want to see on a billboard, and things like pictures, women pictures of yourselves without hijab, or intimate family pictures or pictures of your babies. Like, be really careful of those things on your devices, back them up to the cloud, but make sure that they're not on devices that you are traveling with. God forbid something happens. What should you do? Document everything. Which TSA agent was disrespectful? Which CBP agent asked you questions? Request their names and badge numbers. Write down the agency. Very quickly record a narrative of what happened. That could be a voice note to yourself. It could be a voice note to a loved one. It could be, if you already have a lawyer, a voice note to your lawyer. And again, if any of your devices or any of your luggage is confiscated, request custody receipts. CARE can help you file a trip complaint. We can also work with you to file other types of complaints depending on the scenarios. We have lawsuits on behalf of people who have been prevented from flying. We have lawsuits on behalf of people who have faced extensive questioning at the border. And sometimes what we're going to do is say, okay, like, let's make sure that at the very least the data about this was collected. And then, of course, one of the things we can do is file a Freedom of Information Act request with the agency that was involved, which is why it's going to matter that you wrote down which agency it was. Through all of these things, never sign anything without first consulting with an attorney. They give you a document to sign, you think it makes sense, it's not going to make sense to you. One of our favorite sayings among lawyers is that a lawyer who represents themselves represents a fool. So even your best lawyer friends will not and should not represent themselves. In other words, you as a non-lawyer should not represent yourself. So if you are provided with a document or asked to sign something, you should object and say that you will not be able to do so without first consulting with an attorney. If you don't have an attorney, you can always, always reach out to CARE. Most of what I've talked about has focused on US citizens, but I want to spend a few minutes on non-citizens. Some of you might be non-citizens. For lawful permanent residents or green card holders, you can be delayed at the border, just like a US citizen can be. You cannot be denied entry. So you don't have the same unconditional right to enter the United States that citizens have, but you cannot be turned around either. So you're kind of in this middle group. Visa holders can be turned around. Green card, US citizens have a guaranteed right to entry. Green card holders are closer to citizens in that regard. Now, you could be detained if Customs and Border Patrol suspects that you violated immigration law. And if that happens, you do have due process rights. Here specifically, a major right that you have is to enter the country and to see an immigration judge. CBP, Customs and Border Protection, cannot take your green card away at the US border. They're not allowed to. They don't have that power. One of the things that's been coming up in questions for green card holders is, but are they being tricked into signing papers? They are not being tricked into signing papers. They are sometimes simply being asked to sign papers. Now, this will not come up for any of you coming back from Hajj, inshallah. Where it comes up is green card holders who have been outside of the United States for more than 12 months and are being assessed to have abandoned their US residency. Hajj is not so long, and Saudi Arabia won't let you stay there even if you try. So none of you will be perceived to have abandoned your US residency. So green card holders, if you're presented with something to sign at the border, do not sign. Ask for a notice to appear, and then they will eventually send you home. You'll call CARE or your immigration attorney, and we will strategize. Not something we anticipate happening, but it is coming up. People are very scared of it happening. And if you have further, more specific situations based on your individual scenario as a green card holder, please feel free to reach out to your Dar es Salaam coordinators who can connect you with your local care office and or whom we're happy to help you find immigration attorneys in your community. Now, non-immigrant visa holders. This is the least safe category coming into the United States because they can be denied visas. So if you have a tourist visa, a student visa, a work visa, an ESTA, or some other number of visas, you do not have an absolute right to enter. Entry is permission to enter is assessed every time you present yourself at the border. You can be detained and deported from the border as a non-immigrant visa holder. Remember, citizens and green card holders cannot be deported. Non-immigrant visa holders can be deported. Non-immigrant visa holders might also then say, I'm afraid to return to where I came from. Of course, a very real-time example of this is Gaza. If you are from Gaza, you cannot go back there right now. That person would need to say that at the border and it would start another process. This isn't something that we anticipate happening with this Hajj group or with Hajj groups in general because non-immigrant visa holders are not the majority of Hajj attendees. But if this is you and you have follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out so that we can make sure to support you. The last thing, actually. We talked about phones and social media for citizens, for non-citizens. Your social media can be searched. You can be questioned. Non-immigrants could be denied admission based on what they find on your phones. And then, of course, green card holders also risk additional harassment based on what they find on your phones. If you are worried about being at risk, please reach out for an individual consultation. Know ultimately that what matters is that this is not happening to the majority of people. I started there and I'm stopping there as well to say that this is not what we are seeing happening to the majority of people, but there is a lot of concerns. In summary, let's come back here. In summary, you have received this beautiful and blessed invitation to the best trip of your life. It will be incredible despite the chaos of the world around us. US citizens, you have little to nothing to worry about if you've never had issues before. You always have the right to enter the country. You should refuse to answer any irrelevant questions. And in fact, I encourage US citizens to take on the inconvenience of doing this on behalf of people who don't have the same privilege. To prepare, make sure that you arrive at the airport early, that your phone is secure, that everything in your baggage follows policy and laws around what to take, what to declare, and how to do it. And then on return, you should make sure that you're always calm, you're always thinking and documenting who am I talking to, what agency is this, and limiting the information that you share. Non-citizens, your rights are not the same in these scenarios, right? Green card holders, you absolutely have a right to re-enter the country, but you may face additional scrutiny. And non-visa holders, so non-citizen, non-immigrant visa holders, do not have a right to enter the country. You are assessed for that every time. And still, a lot of the precautions that we advise citizens can apply to you. And you can be even safer by ensuring full compliance with all of the laws and consulting with your immigration attorney in advance. You always, no matter where we are, right? You're at a protest, you're at the masjid, you're on the street, or you're coming back into the country from Hajj, you always have the right to remain silent. You have the right to consult with an attorney before or after, but not always during. And I didn't talk about this directly, but I know it came up in the questions is, can I call my attorney from the border? You can try. If they let you, you won't get through. Highly unlikely. And in most cases, they won't let you, right? And so you're really going to be protecting yourself here. You're not signing anything, and you're making sure that your phone is secure. One of the things that I tell young people when I talk to them about securing their devices is that Allah sees everything. Allah is also a lot more forgiving than any law enforcement agency we work with. And so you should assume that it's Allah and the FBI who would be looking at your phone, and anything on your phone could be up on a billboard. That is all of my content. I know Brother Ahmed and I talked about taking questions that we get from the audience. And so I'm going to turn it back over to you, Brother Ahmed, to open up questions.
Jazakumullah khair, Sister Zahra, for your insight and recommendations. May Allah bless you. Actually, I just wanted to ask a few questions that were asked earlier. But before I do that, I just wanted to preempt by asking, I don't know, we often hear news stories, right? Like this one random news story that goes like wildfire, like someone being arrested before their citizenship ceremony, or a green card holder being deported. That creates all this anxiety, right? And fear. And that's the major discussion that's happening in all the masajid all of a sudden, right? So can you just let us know, knowing that you're in this position where you see and hear all of this, how common are these incidences, right? In reality. And for everybody, I mean, like everyday individuals, right? Who are just living their normal lives, is this something that could realistically happen to them? I mean, for me, for instance, I know that I always go to secondary. It's always been the case. It's always interesting. But believe it or not, which is very interesting to everyone that would notice, is that my actually most recent entry, I didn't go to secondary, to the point that I was joking with the officer saying, "Are you serious? Am I free to go?" He's like, "Yeah, why?" I was like, "You're not taking me secondary? I'm ready." So it's funny because I actually got the opposite treatment. But again, it's normal, the anxiety, and as if nusuk wasn't enough with regards to our anxiety. These news articles or these news channels or social media that ends up saying, well, oh my God, I'm a green card holder, so I can get stopped anywhere and get deported if this guy was getting his citizenship, right? So if you can just elaborate on that, like, what is the percentages, right? I mean, there's like quite a few, I don't know, 5, 6 million Muslims in the United States, with an average of probably more than 50 or 60% of us traveling at least once a year, right? Like, can you give us at least some kind of statistics? Is this 1 out of 5? Or is it like 5 out of 10 people? Is it 1 out of 10? Is it 1 out of 100? Just to kind of give us an idea, because I think a lot of us are anxious about this.
Yes. Brother Ahmed, you gave me the real life example of you can always talk yourself into trouble. Did you ask to go to secondary? Is that what I've
Yeah, yeah,
just
yeah. I actually, yeah, I was surprised. Yeah, I was surprised
don't
because
do that next
I'm
time.
mentally,
I
I
know,
am
I'm just
mentally,
teasing you.
yeah, yeah, no, but I'm mentally prepared because I actually genuinely just convinced myself that this is normal for me, right?
Right.
To the
Absolutely.
point where I chit chat with them and I laugh and I smile and and all that stuff, and I get myself into all trouble because I love talking,
Yeah.
but but I do
No, no,
know
it's
and I've
good.
learned
It's good.
enough
It's good.
not to divulge
Um,
any information, of course. Yeah.
yeah, you're totally fine. I just thought it was really funny. And I know a lot of people with this trauma where it's like, wait, what? Not this time. So I know you asked for statistics. Let me give you some anecdotal data first.
Right.
For as much work as I do challenging the government, I am on a plane a minimum of twice a week with zero issues. And I
Yes.
leave the country 4 to 6 times a year with zero issues. Now, your Hajjaj may know this. My brother is Sheikh Ahmed Billoo. And so imagine what kind of radar my parents are on. One daughter, one kid is a director at CARE. The other person is an imam at Dar es Salaam and IOK and all these places. My parents just came back from 53 days in Saudi Arabia.
Um,
My dad said they didn't even look at his passport. And I'm only sharing this story because it's like,
yeah.
if anyone's going to be targeted, it's my dad with the long beard in his lacy clothes coming back from 2 months in Saudi Arabia. On his 10th consecutive trip there. Like that is the only place my parents go annually.
Yes.
So that's the
Yes.
anecdotal data, right?
Yes.
Is we're not having issues and I am testing this. Brother Ahmed, I'm like you, but like I'm different because they never stop me. And I'm like, please stop me. I want to experiment with this. It'll
Yeah.
help me learn how to help my clients. Okay. But jokes
I'm
aside,
always going in and saying, "Hey, I'm USC," so I go ahead, right? Because I know the
yes,
folders, and
yes,
it's very
yes.
interesting.
One of the and actually one other piece of advice that people have been asking about is should I apply for global entry? Yeah, go for it. If you can afford Hajj, then you can likely afford global entry. Apply for global entry. If you are approved, it makes your life easier. Yes. If you are declined for global entry or you want the free option, now I've been gatekeeping this secret for a while, so all of you are going to make dua for me at Hajj for telling you about this. Mobile passport control. Same thing, shorter line, you take a selfie when you land, it stores your data. It for the brief period of time where I had some trouble with a family member going through this, mobile passport control helped significantly. And we still recommend it, but we don't tell a lot of people about it. So make dua for us if you use it. Both of these things are easy enough to do, like do the things that make your life easier. Now, the numbers. Here's what I can tell you. Muslims traditionally underreport things. So I'm going to assume that for every Muslim that tells me that they've had a travel issue, a few more have actually had it, right? So Brother Ahmed, I don't know if you've ever filed a formal complaint with CARE. I doubt it. Most people who go through sexy, there you go. So I can only give you the data with a grain of salt, knowing you didn't report to us. Last year, CARE received across all types of complaints. So employment discrimination, school bullying, all of these other things. Um, not even, I don't even think we had 1,000 travel complaints because we had 8,000 in general. But that was everything. That's protest arrests and Palestine and this and that. There are 7 million plus Muslims in the United States. So if you imagine 8,000 total complaints, I know these aren't the numbers you want to hear. I can tell you that the travel is a drop in the bucket. And that's why I started with the anecdotal because the data is
Yes.
so limited. But
Yes.
I'm not worried about, sincerely, I'm not worried about any of your Hajjaj having issues this trip if they've never had issues before. If they've had issues
And
before, they should talk to CARE before they go.
they should be ready. They kind of know what might be expected. It's a norm. Unfortunately, it's a norm. But again, Jazakallah khair. Again,
Wait, I
it's
did the
it's
math.
all
I did the math. Let me tell you.
okay.
So I was
Uh-huh.
really worried about that 8,000 number, right? Because it's all
Yes.
of my complaints and 8,000, it's the most we've ever gotten.
Yes.
8,000 complaints on a population of 7 million Muslims is
Yes.
0.001,
0.001. Wow.
right? So I
And this
want
was
us to
from
be
and this is from
last year.
what year?
This is from last year.
Last
So
year,
care,
2024, under the Biden administration.
yes, but remember the worst complaints in Islamophobia was after October
Correct.
2023. So Biden
Yeah.
doesn't get any passes here.
Yeah.
Um, but still, if it was less, 0.001 isn't even a whole percent.
Correct.
Um, And so I say that to say, look, we have to take it seriously, we have to prepare, and we have to be the loudest voices to protect our community, our rights, our country, etc. And we're not allowed to bet in Islam. Sheikh Ahmed Billoo would stop me, but if we were betting people, I would say, let's put some money on it.
Yeah.
We're not going to put money.
Jazakallah khair. I'm going to ask two questions and I'm going to open up for a few live Q&As. Excuse me, because I believe you probably answered all the questions. Most of them are going to be duplicates, but the question specifically is going to be about nonprofits. If you're part of a nonprofit that helps refugees and you have your phone, should you be concerned, or you should be concerned about your phone, or should you be concerned about entry, regardless of citizenship and so on? Because I think you gave a blanket statement. If you're a U.S. citizen, you're a green card holder, you're a visa holder. Those are the rules. They apply to everyone, I'm assuming.
Correct. Those are the rules. They apply to everyone, regardless of who you are, what you're doing, etc. If you have confidential and privileged information on your phone, as a lawyer, for example, you have an additional obligation to protect that information because you could lose your law license. But if you are with a nonprofit, for example, and you're doing casework for refugees or domestic violence survivors, or maybe you work at an Islamic school, what I would suggest, right, is that you not have any of that private information on your phone as you're crossing a border, especially if you're worried that your phone will be confiscated. Now, again, US citizens, you should object and not provide your password. Still, make it so that even if they got to your phone, there's nothing on there that would harm. Like, there's one, a lot of us worry about ourselves. In this question, Brother Ahmed, I worry about everyone else. Because if you get to all my friends who are in the community and they lead the
Yes.
nonprofit, I've
Yes.
endangered everyone. And so
Yes.
don't travel with that information. You don't need it with you while you're at Hajj.
Right.
And if you're a non-citizen, you are the consequence for not providing the password is even higher, which means that the preventative measures should be tighter, i.e., my phone doesn't have anything interesting on it.
Jazakallah khair, sis. Should we delete should we delete apps that show sympathy toward Palestinians? Are there best practices you can recommend?
You If you are a non-citizen, your social media is subject to scrutiny at all times, including while you are in the United States and not traveling, right? The Trump administration has made that clear. They are looking for quote unquote anti-Semitism on the social media of non-immigrant visa holders, so student visas, work visas, etc. But
Very good.
otherwise, no, because your phone is locked. There's,
Yes.
right? If I'm not giving you the password, it doesn't matter. And what I want our community to really know is that what we used to say is if it leaves your lips or fingertips, it's forever. The angels on your shoulders wrote it down, right? So think about that anytime you send an inappropriate message or a mean message or something. But also, Meta has it, X has it, Snapchat has it, right? And so you can delete it from your phone or your app, but if you set it, it exists forever. And so living in perpetual paranoia doesn't do us any service. And again, for US citizens, not the topic of this talk, but Allah put us in the United States in 2025 with US citizenship for a reason. And I sincerely believe we will be asked, what did you do with the gift that I gave you? And if it was I was too scared to post about Palestine despite being a US citizen, so I deleted everything, I don't know. Like I'm going to struggle to stand before my Lord with that answer.
Jazakallah khair, sister. Can you share an example of how to decline answering a question or giving a password?
That's such a good question. What we simply advise people to say is, I am asserting my right to remain silent. Or I would like to remain silent. That's it. I would like to remain silent. I would like to remain silent. We're in a webinar setting, not a meeting setting, but if we were in a meeting setting, I would ask everybody to unmute and say it together. So I'm going to ask the listeners to say, because Brother Ahmed, you know this, like, if you've never said it before, it's like why everybody practices all of their Hajj du'as. And I know that's a different level, but like you're so excited and nervous doing all of it. And that's the good setting that if you've never read it out loud before, you're not going to get it right, right? And so you have everyone practice their duas. It's kind of the same thing with these things. Now, a cop is standing before you, he has a gun, you're tired, and he says, give me your phone password. I would like to remain silent. But if I've never said it before, I'm not going to
Yes,
say it then.
correct. Jazakallah khair. Can you provide us CARE's number? So I just posted on the chat the website for CARE. You
Perfect.
can search and see what the closest office to you is. What happens after a report is submitted? Can we record the event or wear a GoPro or a chest camera?
So cell phone usage is so care number, yes, look up your local office through care.com. We are also on Instagram, Facebook, X, all of those platforms. We're on all of them. You can find us in all of the ways. And so reach out to your local chapter um, to get help and right to learn more, to request a presentation in your community or so on. Um, Cell phone usage is not allowed in inspection areas. So you may often see signs about this. You can actually get in trouble for having your cell phone out. And so we don't advise trying to record in that scenario. It's a very overwhelming situation. You're not going to accomplish two things: protect your rights and remain silent, and record, right? And so, like, recording is what, like, we see all these viral videos, to your point, Brother Ahmed. A couple of sassy people make a video, it goes viral, and everybody thinks they should make a video. No, like, focus on keeping your mouth shut and getting out of there. Again, in a separate interaction entirely, we do train people on how to record law enforcement if you see them harassing someone on the street. We know, for
Mm,
example, that there have been so many viral videos of police captured on camera killing unarmed black men. And those videos have been used to bring police officers or try to bring police officers to justice. So I do recommend recording, but not if you are the target, right? So not in secondary inspection, not in any airport inspection area, and not if you are the target. You can record if someone else is the target and it makes sense for you to record safely and it's permitted. There's no Law enforcement has no expectation of privacy when they do their job. But recording is not something you want to do or deal with if you're the target.
Jazakallah khair. Question about WhatsApp. Since we're going to be using WhatsApp in Hajj, those that are coming back, is the expectation that they can log off the WhatsApp on their phone, delete WhatsApp? I mean, they're welcome to do any of that, I would assume, on the
Yeah.
plane before they arrive.
Look for the, so one, make sure you have two-factor authentication turned on for your WhatsApp. If you can log out when you land, there's this brief window that we have. We touch down and we're still allowed to use our phones. And then we exit the plane and then we're in the inspection area and we're not supposed to. So I do a couple of things at that time. I go through the mobile passport control process, right? And I fill out the form. I say I landed at the airport. I'm here. I will text whomever is waiting for me to confirm I have arrived, right? And then at that point, you can log out of everything, right? Whatever you've got left on your phone, go ahead and log out of it. And remember, if you didn't already turn off your face or fingerprint ID, this is a good time to do that. Um, and then just relax and go through. You'll be fine because you're not giving anyone your password, so they're not going to get into your WhatsApp.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I think this is a curious question. How do they force you to use your thumb to unlock phone? I highly doubt they're grabbing your fingers and put it, but they all have your fingerprints, I'm assuming.
Yes, I mean, in an extreme, so Face ID is the worst one, right? Because I literally just hold
Yeah.
the phone up to your face. Fingerprint, well, if you get arrested, they fingerprint you. So they do actually grab your thumb and take your fingerprint. So their ability to do that or to maneuver you physically is something that they're allowed to do. The difference, and this is like so funny because this is the law nerds, where like the law nerds geek out, but like they can maneuver you physically, they cannot get what is in your brain. Like that's the difference. So the courts have said the password is in your brain, you can't be forced to produce it. But your
Hmm.
body is subject to their control. It's a terrifying way to explain it. Sorry.
Interesting. Interesting. Um, do we guarantee that we get our phones back after they're taken?
Eventually, yes. Um,
Eventually.
yeah, and there's a layer of privilege to this, right? Because it's like I can't afford to be without my iPhone for 2 weeks because everything I do is through it, but I also can't afford a backup phone. So like I'm kind of making a little bit of an economic decision about which risk to take. Eventually the phone does come back, but this is why we strongly urge people to get a receipt if something is confiscated.
Excellent. Can you please talk about an alternate phone, benefits, drawbacks? I guess you call it burner.
Yeah,
Uh,
a lot of people call it a burner phone. Some people call it a travel device.
okay.
we've long recommended travel devices to people. This comes up a lot in Silicon Valley, actually. If you have trade secrets on your laptop, you better not be crossing a border with trade secrets or pending patents, right? Because a laptop gets confiscated, you're going to get fired from your job. And so for a long time, we have recommended that if people are worried about their devices, that they should not travel with the ones that are most sensitive. If they can have a backup phone, if they can use something that doesn't have so many years of metadata on it, and it's just what they're using functionally. I'm at Hajj, I have WhatsApp with Dar es Salaam, maybe I have, I don't know, text with my mom, but I don't have Facebook and X and all of these things. The thing is, it's difficult for people to travel without all of these like things that we get used to in our daily lives. And so if you get a backup phone, good for you. Keep in mind, if you put your real phone in your luggage, it's still subject to a search.
Uh, we're starting to get creative with the question, sister. Can they force you to? I mean, brothers and sisters. I mean, I'm no lawyer, but I'm going to answer something here. This is not Mission Impossible. This is not going to be somewhere where they're going to interrogate you, will hold you down, and put your fingers and force you to download Facebook and force you to sign in. No one can force you to do anything, so you can refuse. All right. Again, I think we watch a lot of movies as well, so we need to be able to differentiate between reality and fiction. But of course, please feel free to answer, Sister Zahra.
Let me go through them really quickly. Have I had examples of families traveling together being selected as a family for secondary screening? Generally, people are separated during secondary screening because it's not that husband, wife, and all of the kids are going to be subject. So anyone that's selected for screening is pulled aside. And it's actually better for whomever is not selected to calmly go collect the luggage, calm the kids, right? Like update the family and just wait. Um, that's what I'll say about families. If I'm going nonstop from Jeddah to LAX, is it more likely to go through customs in Jeddah? No, I don't believe Jeddah is a pre-clearance site. You will go through customs in the United States. Pre-clearance sites are going to be, for example, in Dubai, in Toronto, in Vancouver, in there's a few other places. You'll know if you're doing that, but the majority of these flights, your customs is going to be in Los Angeles. If your phone is confiscated, what do they do with it? They're going to take it offsite and look at it. Again, if it's encrypted, if you've got the password on it, they're going to need some type of reasonable suspicion, including convincing a supervisor or a judge to get them in. And that's why put as little as possible on your phone and put a password on it. Do we know if they take our phone, would they download the data on the phone? Yes, that is the risk. And they will do it right there in front of you if you give them the password. If I've got my company phone on it, does the company owned phone make it easier or harder? Well, it's going to cause you problems with your employer, is the real issue with a company owned phone because you're going to have to go back to work and say, well, hey, boss, this happened, right? So if you absolutely need your company owned phone, make sure that like, for example, at CARE, we have a policy that says that if we're going to take our devices internationally, a director has to approve of it, right? Because why? Like, why do I need CARE's laptop in Saudi Arabia, right? A director could say, okay, maybe. So just make sure you're aware of that. For travelers who are minors, we have not seen instances of minors being pulled apart from their parents for questioning. Like, we have not seen it. But all minors in our community and generally should be aware that they have a right to ask for their parents. And so and you should train your kids about this generally. So separate from Hajj, like you go to a protest, you've got an issue, the cops pull you aside. You're at school, and you know what happens? Child Protective Services shows up. Says, I want to talk to the kid. The kids should always ask for their parents. They are minors. Even if you log out of the phone, yes, the phone has all of the data, which is why, again, if you don't want it there, like if you don't want to see it on a billboard, right, because you would be embarrassed or it would be criminal, it should not be on your phone. But if everything is encrypted and your password locked, their ability to get to those things, and use the example of something not criminal, but like picture of your sister without her hijab, they're gonna have a really hard time getting into that phone. Um, you have 2 or 3 minutes when you land to do things like turn off your Face ID and to reset your phone. But I would strongly suggest that these things are handled beforehand. Canadians. So we've got a couple of Canadian questions. Nothing has changed in Canada. So I don't want to say it's the land of the free and the home of the brave. That was supposed to be us. But for the most part, nothing has changed at the borders in Canada that we are aware of. If you are a Canadian traveling through US ports of entry, what we can advise is that you, again, just plan for the additional time, right? So going to Saudi Arabia, if you're coming into the US, whether your clearance is in Canada or the United States, plan for the time, right? Like don't miss your connection to Jeddah because you got stuck in Toronto. Plan for that. And then on the return, your re-entry may still be through the United States, in which case a lot of this will matter. The good news is that the worst thing that they can do to you is send you back to Canada, and all of us Americans would wish that we would get that sentence. And then there's a few like very specific immigration questions, a couple of people on different visas. In your cases, rather than getting into the specifics of the visa, the asylum, anything else, I would recommend that you talk to your attorney. And if you don't have an immigration attorney that you are working with, you can look up your local care office at care.com and talk to them. Yeah, those things are going to be very specific and are very dependent on the type of visa you have. The last one is a good one. Veterans Affair IT card. It doesn't hurt to have things like that, but I also don't want to endorse it because not everyone's going to have it, right? So if you have it and you want to carry it with you, great. It's very similar to a lot of people asking, like, do I just carry my passport around in the US at all times? You're not required to. I can't be trusted to do that because I will lose it. And ultimately, it's not a determinant. You're relying on someone's favor in that scenario. The Veterans ID card doesn't prove that you have a right to enter the US or that you're a US citizen. It doesn't get you off a watch list if you're on one. So if you have it and you want to carry it, that's fine. But if you don't have anything like that, I wouldn't worry about it either. Your passport is what you are required to carry with you as you come to the United States. I think that's everything, Brother Ahmed.
Jazakallah khair, Sister Zahra. May Allah bless you always. I ask everyone here to please make dua for her, and inshallah, that she gets to go for Hajj next year.
I mean,
Inshallah, thank you so much for your time. I've opened the chat. If anyone wants to make a comment or say something, Sister Zahra, please do so now. Again, this session has been recorded and will be posted on our YouTube channel within 24 hours, as always. So, Jazakallah khair, brothers and sisters, and I hope you all have a good night. And I think yeah, we're about over. Yeah, so the chat is open now. If anyone wants to say anything, all right, awesome, very good. Jazakallah khair, everyone. See, we always like to end it where everyone just
I was like, what do you need them to say to me? Am I in trouble? Okay.
I want the yeah.
Jazakallah khair.
We always thank everyone. This Hajj family is amazing. We all support each other, and we want to thank you. So like, Jazakallah khair, Sister Zahra. Assalamu alaikum.